Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, my name is General Soulfax, and today we're playing War Thunder Ground Forces once again. This is a realistic battle match on the Normandy map, and what we are seeing here currently on the screen is the new Tier 3 British premium tank, the Black Prince. And I gotta say, before we start this replay, this tank is so freaking awesome. It's so well armored, and the gun is... It's just pure joy when you play this tank. Well, I wouldn't know because this is not one of my replays. This replay was given to me by Mr. Cracker, and he's a member of the Q Squadron, and basically that kind of makes him a professional player. Now, don't get discouraged from watching this replay because this is still an awesome replay, but I need to mention this. Like I said, he is kind of a professional player. Well, he is a professional player because Cube is taking part in the War Thunder Proleague, which is basically a 7 vs 7 competition of 10 teams, which takes place in realistic battles. So don't be surprised when you see how good he really is. He does make some mistakes, I'm not gonna deny it, but he is really a good player. Now that we've done with the introduction of this video, let's talk about the Black Prince a little bit. So the Black Prince is the first British heavy tank we have in War Thunder, and surprise, surprise, it's a prototype tank. It never entered service. It was basically designed upon the Mark 7 Churchill. I think, if I'm wrong, please correct me. But the biggest difference between the Mark 7 is that it's got a different turret, a more wider hull, but the biggest difference is this gun. It's the QF 17 pounder 76mm gun that has the ability to fire APDC shells. What APDC stands for is armor piercing Teapot discharging shells. And these shells, like any other British shell, well, like most British shell, not like any other, has absolutely no high explosive filler. Now, this is kind of controversial in War Thunder because Russian shells, Soviet shells, excuse me, have a lot of explosive filler and they do a lot of damage, while American and German shells have a smaller amount of explosive filler. But look at this T-34-85, one shot, boom! Like I was saying, German and American shells have less armor, less high explosive filler, and they do, comparatively to Soviet shells, less damage. But the thing is, this was basically the British doctrine in World War II. They thought, and they thought rightly, that it's a big bother to actually include high explosive in their shells because the fragmentation of the shells themselves and the kinetic energy they deliver towards their target is enough to take him out. Now we see his second target, a Tiger 1, puts one shell into him, and the Tiger 1 just decides to run away because, well, what's currently happening in War Thunder is because this is the first tank of this type that we see, people are still in the dark about dealing with it. It's got a very decent amount of armor. It's got 152mm of armor on the hull front, and there are no weak spots on the front of the hull. Absolutely none. If you shoot at the tracks, there's, of course, another 152mm behind it, so effectively you don't have anywhere else to shoot at the tank than at the front of the hull or at the front of the turret. And the front of the turret is also 152mm of armor, but it's also layered, so at some points on the turret there's more than 300mm of armor, so you don't want to be shooting there. Where you want to shoot this tank is in the sides. I know it sounds kind of stupid while we're watching Mr. Cracker here mess this completely up and test the very poor engine power of this tank while trying to traverse this trench. But what you need to do with this tank is flank him, and it's not very hard because this tank can do a maximum of 17 kilometers an hour in a straight line. Yes, I'm not messing with you, a maximum of 17 kilometers an hour in a straight line. This tank is, I don't know if it's slower, but it's as fast as a mouse, and it's not as well armored and it doesn't have that huge gun, but it's still a very good tank. Now, I'm just getting completely caught up in talking about the Black Prince and completely ignoring the replay. But yeah, he went down into the middle of the town near the church and decided to duke it out, but in the meantime, the enemies managed to flank them and now they're capping B. And he decides, definitely the slowest tank in the match, he decides to go back and gets rewarded for it because you're gonna see what is behind this corner. One of the biggest threats to this tank at this battle rating is a big gun, an 88mm gun that is equipped on these two Tigers right there, and they're just completely oblivious to his presence. Puts one into one of those Tigers, one shot, one kill. Waits for the reload and puts another one into him, and in that sequence you could have seen how fast of a reload this gun has. Also worth noting that these shells that he's firing have 230mm of penetration and a velocity of 1400 meters per second. which is just completely insane and which makes this tank really good in close range engagements as well as in a sniping situation. But yeah, let's focus on the replay. So he managed to get into the B cap after dealing with those two tigers, trying to recap, but he's not able because there's somebody in the B cap here. And the thing is, this tank, like any other tank, depends on, like any other heavy tank, depends on effective angling, because while 152 minutes of penetration is great, still Soviet and German guns at this tier have a chance of penetrating you. T-30-45 on the side. You see, this is what happens when you see a new tank. He hesitated on shooting the Black Prince because he didn't know where to shoot him. And there's gonna be another T-30-45 which shoots him right in the turret, and that's a no-no because there's a double layer of 152 millimeters of armor protection on the turret, exactly on that spot. So what you want to do is what this T-30-45 does here. So our player here cracked, puts one shot into him. I think he actually missed because the T-30-45 managed to get away and he tried to flank him. But the thing is, our player here managed to predict that because, well, it's kind of predictable. If he's running away, he's gonna try and pop out somewhere else, and he angled his armor towards him in advance. Now he comes up from the side, shoots him into the tracks actually absorb the shot, and he's able to put another shot into him, but he's still not freaking dead, I think. So he managed to rack up 7 kills in this match, but we haven't seen anything very spectacular here because most of the things that he shot at were not in a position to shoot him back, or were not in a position to actually penetrate him. We will see that in just a minute here while he successfully, I think, starts recapping B after dealing with that very pesky T-30-45. So while Mr. Cracker is actually capping B, his friendly team has managed to start capping A. And at this point in time, this match looks to be very close to being over and a win for the allied team, but it's gonna change very quickly here. Now what we're gonna see in just a second is a very effective use of the binocular scope. What the binocular scope does is actually gives you a higher vantage point of the map. As you can see, he's not able to see through the scope through these bushes, but when he engages in his binocular sights, he is able to see this tank, and when you're aiming down the binocular sights, if you press the fire button, your barrel will snap to wherever you're looking at. So that's a very useful skill to have. So while Mr. Cracker was picking up his 8th kill, most of his team has miraculously died. I don't know what happened to them, but most of them were killed by Russian bias. Okay, I'm just kidding. Most of them just got killed. So yeah, at this point in time, while he's capping B, he needs to think about what's he gonna do. He's got two options. He can either go straight to A and try to fight it out and try to cap A, or he can do what he's doing now and try to defend B, get himself in a very good defensive position, defensive position, and set up an ambush for any player that comes here and tries to challenge his claim on the B point. Now he spotted what seems to be an Su-85, and if I'm not mistaken, he is carrying German markings, which is very suspicious. This might actually be a German tank. But if you might have noticed earlier, this is a very weird match because it's Germany and Russia against USA and Britain, so it's very weird. But yeah, so he picks up his 9th kill, and you're gonna see what happens in just a second. There's a big explosion right now. Plane crash, that's a PE-8, and a PE-8 carries a 5-ton bomb, which completely levels all the trees, makes a very big crater out of this map, and that's what they needed to do. That's what the enemy team resorted to do when they wanted to take out Mr. Cracker. But fret not, he's gonna spawn in another tank very quickly now, and you might be surprised to know that it's another Black Prince. So what Gaijin did when they introduced British ground forces in War Thunder, since they made them all premium, you couldn't expect a certain player, a single player, to have more than one British premium tank. And since when playing ground forces, realistic battle ground forces, you have the ability to spawn multiple tanks in a single match, they needed to come up with a way to allow people who own only one British premium tank to spawn more tanks. So what they basically did is they allowed for a single British premium tank to be spawned up to 3 times, not counting the backup vehicles in any realistic battle ground forces match. So unsurprisingly, our player here, Mr. Crack, decided to go for another Black Prince, and he's gonna do a lot more killing with this one than he did with the last one. So luckily for Mr. Cracker, while he was dead and respawning, nobody managed to actually sneak up into B and started capping it again. But as you can see on the minimap, if you take a look down there, there's nobody else on his team that is alive at this point in time. As you can see, there's only one P47D25 that's alive, and he doesn't have any. And I really do mean doesn't have any guns, and I just think he crashed this just very second. So what Mr. Cracker needs to do, and what he's going to do very successfully, is set up a very good defensive position. The cap points on most maps are either overly open, which means they're just out in the open with not a lot of cover to hide from, or just like this cap point right here. It's very weird how cluttered this cap point is while he gets strafed by a what looks to be Yak 9T. But yeah, he's in a defensive position, and what does he see? He sees, we're gonna see in just a second, he sees a lot of tanks coming down this street who want to flank him, because even though this is a new tank, people understand that every tank has weaker side armor than it has front armor. So he spotted what seems to be a KV-85 or maybe an IS-1. He puts 2 shots into him, misses him with both shots, puts a 3rd shot, misses him with all of his shots, and unfortunately makes a blunder and kind of lets him go. But fret not, there's more tanks coming over here. That is a what looks to be an Su-85, I think. Gets the kill, 9th kill in the match, I think. But now he's taking fire, and I don't think he's very concerned because he is nicely positioned to take fire. His front is towards the enemy, and what makes this tank very effective is having your front towards the enemy. 10th kill in the match, and he decides now to angle a little bit for the T-34-85 so he can sneak up a shot into him. Now, we're gonna see that KV-85 just a little bit later, but for now he managed to deal with the threat, and now he's gonna start backing up and getting into a nice defensive position here to manage to defend B from those attackers. So we saw Mr. Cracker get 11 kills already in this match, and seeing this replay, some people might claim that standing at 5.7 with its armor and with its gun, the Black Prince might be slightly overpowered, but I got 2 counterpoints. Number 1, this tank can only do 17 kilometers an hour. That's basically what I'm gonna say about that. Just think about it. This tank cannot outrun a mouse. It's not gonna face a mouse, so that's not a big deal, but it cannot, in theory, outrun a mouse, and any tank in the game, even the Tiger II, IS-2, IS-3, every tank that is bigger than this tank, has more armor and a better gun, can outrun this tank and can outmaneuver it. So that's one big thing. The second big thing, this is a premium tank. You're not gonna see a lot of them, and I know that in some ways that does not make up for the fact that this tank is very powerful, but I still think, I mean, you're not gonna see this tank all that much, so when you do see it, it's gonna seem powerful, but I don't think it is overpowered. Now finally, after what seems to be like 10 minutes of trying to recap B, our hero here, Mr. Cracker, managed to finally recap B and is making his way out, and at this point his 6th sense tingles, and look, a low T-34 1942. Now, T-34 1942 can actually penetrate his tank from the side, but he messed up his shot. I don't know where he shot him. Second shot goes again into his side, but he is angled. And when you have 90 millimeters of side armor, when you angle, it's over 100 easily, and the penetration of the F-34 gun is only 98 millimeters of armor at the most, I think, with the standard shell. So, 3rd shell goes in, and he is dead. But you remember that KV-85 that I talked about just a few seconds ago? Yeah, the one he failed to kill because he decided to go for the hull shot instead of the turret shot. Well, it's gonna kind of bite him in the ass right there, or bite him in the turret, because there he is, the KV-85 that got away. He shot him in the turret, once, and that's basically it for him, because he cannot shoot back. As you can see, he just gave up at this point. He knows he's dead because he can't turn around to face him fast enough to actually bounce a shot from his turret and let himself repair, and there's another T-34 1942 in front of him. But again, fret not, Gaijin made this tank have 3 respawns in realistic battles because what I told you earlier. So with the kills he's gotten, he probably earned enough spawn points to spawn 10 of this tank, so he's gonna go in another one of these. So again, in his 3rd Black Prince of the match, he puts 1 shot into the ground in front of himself out of frustration because, well, that was kind of his fault. He messed up. He let that KV-85 live, and because he decided to shoot at his hull and not at his turret. But yeah, he's again in a good position now because he is at range against tanks that have a lot of problem penetrating his frontal armor. So he decides to go for the T-34 1942 first because, well, he's the first target in front of him. 2 shots into him, and as you can notice again, the APDC shells, because of the lack of the high explosive filler, are kind of hit and miss sometimes, taking 3 shots to kill that tier 2 medium tank here. The KB-85 pokes his head around, gets a shot into the side of his hull, and there's not a lot he can do now, even though he's in a KB-85, and KB-85s have a decent amount of armor, 75 at the front of the hull. This tank has more than double that armor, and the penetration on this gun is more than 3 times what is needed to actually penetrate the front of a KB-85. So with those 2 kills under his belt, Mr. Cracker has reached the mythical number of 13 kills. Well, at least for me. I've never gotten more than 12 kills in a single realistic battle match, and so I gotta say, he is a very good player. He did mention while we were talking on Reddit that he is sort of a professional player, and with this shot, look at this. Oh, so close! I was sure he was going to shoot him, and if he had shot him down, this would have been... oh my god, I just can't even think about it. But yeah, now he's advancing again for the nth time in this match onto B. He gets ambushed by ZSU, whatever you want to call it. That is the Russian SPAA, and the thing is, I don't know why he's doing that. There's absolutely no chance this guy is going to be able to penetrate him if he doesn't even have to angle. He just needs to show him his angled side plate, and that SPAA is not going to be able to penetrate him, but he is proving to be very, very annoying. So we jump forward in the replay just a little bit. He's going up against the KV-85 while capturing the B point, and I don't know if you noticed it, the KV-85 actually managed to take out his gun. Very smart play by him, but also Mr. Cracker is very smart. He angles his hull towards the KV-85 and also angles his turret, which means that the KV-85 can't penetrate him from that side. He needs to get around him, and all props to that KV-85. He knew this. He started getting close, but look at this little trick. He manages to pretend that he's shooting at the KV-85 to bait that shot out of him. And now his gun is repaired, gun reloaded, boom! 15th kill. I neglected to show you Mr. Cracker killing that ZSU SPAA because I didn't think it's very interesting, but yeah. I know I'm starting to sound like a broken record when I keep saying that he needs to get in a good defensive position, but that's basically the only thing he can do at this point in time because he's the only person, the only friendly player remaining on the map. Now, if this was any other tank other than the Mouse and the Black Prince, he would have had enough speed and maneuverability to get out of the cap point and set up a nice ambush for anybody trying to get in the cap point and cap. But the thing is, this tank is very slow, so he decides to do the obvious thing. He wants to go into town and overlook the B point from over there, or maybe put some pressure on the enemy team for a change. But he gets greeted by this guy here, SU-152, and he puts a shot into him, and I think it actually bounces because the SU-152 manages to put a shot into his turret, and this is basically game over for our game over. I say this is basically game over for this Black Prince. I'm trying to show you where he penetrated him, but I'm unable to see it. He probably just shot him in the side because most of his stuff got blown up there. Now the SU-85's taken his very, very sweet time to getting very close to our friend here, Mr. Cracker, and put another shot into his turret. Any second now. Come on. There. So we're jumping forward again. He's again in his Black Prince, and he just spawned and is making his way over to the B point. But in any other time he spawned in a Black Prince, he always checked around himself when he spawned to see if there's anybody in the position to actually camp him and to get a side shots on him. He didn't do this time, and this is the second biggest blunder he does, and he's gonna get punished for it. All the other Black Princes he spawned, he managed to get a single kill in, or more than a single kill, well, a few kills. But not with this one. He gets flanked by an SU-85 who does a very smart thing here. He puts one shot into Mr. Cracker and just rushes him, which means that he does not have the chance to actually angle his armor. He can shoot now, but he cannot just get the gun on target. You know the tank is very slow when you get outmaneuvered by a tank destroyer. You know it's very, very slow when you get outmaneuvered by a tank destroyer. But yeah, this is his 4th death in the match, and I gotta say it was very anticlimactic to see this for the first time. He was playing very, very well up to this point, except with that blunder where he failed to kill the KV-85, but now he just got completely owned by that SU-85. But now he has a chance for revenge. That Su-85 is out there, and since this tank is very slow, he just decides to try and wait for him to come around that corner, because the Su-85 has to be thinking the same thing. He's gonna spawn in another tank. But I think Mr. Cracker learned his lesson, because he is very patient here, waiting for that Su-85 to come out. And even though he had a shot at it here, he could have shot out his tracks, he still didn't take it. Also, another thing you need to do in the Black Prince is be constantly aware of your surroundings, because now he's making his way across open field, and that SU-152, if he was there in position, he would have had a side shot on our player here, but that doesn't happen, and unsurprisingly the Su-85 is not around this corner as well. But what does happen is he gets shot in the side, his engine gets taken out, and the Su-85 has a shot, and he decides to shoot in the worst place possible, in his extremely angled front plate. There's no way he's going to be able to penetrate that. He starts repairing his engine, and the other tank is nowhere to be seen, but the Su-85 makes a blunder. He moves up, exposes himself, and gets himself killed. Mr. Cracker is in a very bad spot now, because if there's one thing that's worse than getting your gun shot out in the Black Prince, it's getting your engine shot out, because this tank, like I said a million times in this video, and I'm very sorry for repeating myself, is very, very slow. Now, there's a tank here trying to go around him, and he does see him. I didn't see him at first, but I saw him in the second replay, puts another shot into him, the first shot into him, and that's his 17th kill? I really don't know, I stopped counting, but yeah, now his engine is finally repaired and he can make his way over to the B point. We're jumping forward again, he's in the B spawn point and is getting attacked by an SPA, but there's that ISU-152, puts a shot into him, and I have to say this, the SU-152 shot him so hard with that 152mm gun that he broke the freaking replay. He literally broke it with his big ass gun. I don't know what's happening here. I've never seen this before, and I saw a lot of replays and I've never seen this happen. But the only logical thing that I can say is that that SU-152 actually shot him so hard he broke the replay. But yeah, he managed to take out 2 of his crew members, but as you can see, that very, very pesky SPAA managed to actually take out his gun, and now both of his tracks, left and right, are taken out. He managed to angle his tank just in time for that 152 to only take out his tracks instead of taking out his whole tank, basically. And this is a weird exchange here, because at one hand he's getting attacked by that SPAA, but he still has the presence of mind to angle his tank properly towards the bigger threat. But also that SPAA is getting very annoying because he's constantly taking out his gun, and even though his repair crew on this tank is very good, as we saw earlier, he's not able to do anything about it. Now he takes another shot from that SU-152, which doesn't kill him instantly, but now finally the duel is over. The SU-152 is dead, and that's his 18th kill in this match, or maybe even 19th, I'm not really sure at this point. But at this point, the only tank remaining on the enemy team is that poor AA there. That poor AA truck with a 20mm gun. He's not going to be able to do absolutely anything. But yeah, this match really shows you how great this tank is, even though it's currently broken on the screen. But yeah, how great this tank is. And I gotta say thank you, Mr. Cracker, and thank you for the Cube Squadron for giving me this replay so I can showcase it. It's been a real pleasure. My name has been Soulfax, and I will see you next time.